Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a new online session. Today we will begin with Chapter 5 Writing Letters. Whenever we decide to write about anything to anyone, the most important thing to keep in mind is our audience. Who is going to read that paper, that letter, that message, or email? Is it a doctor? Is it an instructor? Is it a colleague? Is it a manager? Who is going to read it? And accordingly, once you identify your audience, you can start identifying the needs of that audience. That is, what does that person need to know? How could that person be convinced of the point we want to tell them? That is, we need to identify the purpose of our letter or the medium we're going to write, and then we need to put ourselves in the shoes of our audience, in their place, in order to see what would convince me as a reader in this case. After that, it's important to keep in mind while writing, that is, before writing, while writing, and after you finish writing, it's important to add facts so that your reader would be convinced, because this is one of the points of writing something, to persuade that person of what you are writing about. In addition to that, it's very important to address proper style and tone. That is, who are you writing to? A manager? Does it have to be too formal? A co-worker? Could be less informal, less formal, a little informal, etc. Now we go to letters themselves. Today, in the age of the internet, it is still very essential to write letters. They are still vital, very important in the world of work. Letters are important for the following reasons. Why are they that important? Because they represent your company's public image and your competence. That is, let's just imagine you have received a letter or an email from a company, and while reading you find this is not clear. Oh, that's a spelling mistake. Oh, this is a structural grammar mistake. I didn't get that point. How would you feel? Wouldn't you feel that this is not professional? Wouldn't you feel that, I don't know if I want to do business with that company? It also shows your competence as an employee or as a writer. So it shows that you have very good writing skills, you have good persuasion skills, you know how to present your idea, etc. So this is one point why letters are important. Another point is actually that letters are formal documents. They are far more formal than emails, than memos, than instant messages, etc. Because they are more formal, they are also a part of, they would become a part of an official legal record of an agreement. That is, if my company wants to start a new contract, or a new agreement with another company, usually that agreement or contract are sent with a letter. So that letter in this case becomes an official legal record. So if one day something goes wrong, that legal record can go to court, and can be used to support your case or against your case. Many businesses, because letters represent the public image of a company, many businesses require that letters are routed through channels before they are sent out. That is, I would write the letter, I would send it to my manager would send it to an HR officer or the general manager or etc. before it's sent out to its final destination, because actually it is a legal record and it could be used to support you or against you somewhere. In addition, especially when they are hard documents, letters are more substantial and secure than emails. They are the official and expected medium through which important documents and attachments are sent to leaders. What does that mean? It means I'm applying to a job. I want to send my CV, so I have to write an application letter and send my CV as an attachment or enclosure. Keep that word in mind, enclosure. Okay? Am I writing a contract and sending it to another company? So I send that contract as an attachment with that letter, etc. Usually, in the world of business, people receive less letters and more emails and memos. This is why letters usually have a higher priority. They are more valued. They take more time to write, they take more time to read, and they are more official and legal than other communication means in the world of business. How can we send letters? Well, we can send the letter as an email, we can send it, post it on a website, on social media, we can send it in the body of an email, not as an attachment to an email. We can send it by fax, and we can always send it by post as a hard letter, as a hard copy of the letter. Now, we move to the second part. We've talked about what letters are, why we send them, why they are important, and now we're going to talk about their formats. When we say the word format, the first thing that should come to our minds is the form. And when we say form, then we say shape. So basically, we're going to find out the format of every letter by simply looking at it first. After we look at it, we discover its format, and accordingly, we identify the parts. Now let's look at the first format. What do we call it? Yes, full block. With a full block formatted letter, all information is flushed against the left margin, which means it is pushed towards the left. All of the information. But to make things easier to read, it's very important to double space between one paragraph and the other. Employers prefer that companies use full block formats because they have something called a letterhead stationery. What's a letterhead? Do you see that printed part inside the paper when you get a letter from university, from a company? That information imprinted on the top of that paper is called the letterhead. It usually includes the name of the company, the logo, the address, and other information like an email, a website, a Facebook page, social media connection, etc. This is how a full block letter looks like. If you zoom with me, that part, M&M, Madison and Moore, is the letterhead. Do you see how it is written up the top of the page? It includes the logo, the name of the company, phone number, address, email, Facebook page, etc. Now, after that, there are the different parts of the letter, as you can see. Everything is pushed to the left side, to the left margin, and there are spaces between every section and the other so that the reader knows where every part begins and ends. Now, the next format is called the modified block format. Let's look at it. Now, when we say the modified block format, we usually do not have a letterhead. The modified block format begins with the address, not the name of the company, not the name of the sender, nothing. It directly starts with the address. Can you see where the address and the date are written? See, they are written in the center and flushed to the right. And if you look down the bottom of the screen, of the form, you will see also the complementary line and the signature also written towards the right of the letter. Okay, so in a modified block format, the writer's address, date, complementary clause, and signature are positioned toward the right side of the letter aligned with each other. The inside address, salutation, body of the letter, these are names we're going to learn in a minute, so don't rush it, are flush against the left margin. Now, the third format is called semi-block, okay? And this is how it looks. As you can see, there is no letterhead. I know the slide is not that clear, but the letter begins with the name of the sender, the address of the sender, and all the necessary information about him or her. Okay, and as you can see, they are written in the center of the paper. The date is also centered, the complementary line is centered, and the signature is centered. Everything else is written in a way similar to the modified block format. Let me take you back to that. See, the inside address, the date, the body of the message are written towards the left, but the paragraphs are indented and there are spaces between one section and the other. Okay? Now, when we write a letter, we have to decide which format to use, which makes us ask ourselves, which format should I use and why? Most of the time, full block format is written whenever you work for a certain company, because usually companies have letterheads imprinted on the papers they use. So basically, it means you work for a certain company. When you're a freelancer, it's most probably more efficient if you use modified block format, unless you have your own logo, address as a freelancer, that is, or as an individual worker. Whereas semi-block format is mostly used by students trying to write application letters or inquiry letters or etc. We're going to meet those terms later on. So bear with me and wait. Now, as we have already said, a letter is made up of different parts. Okay? Actually, they are 9. 7 of them are essential. You have to add them to every letter. And 2 are optional, which means it depends on whether you need them or not. Okay? The first part, as you can see, is the heading. It could be either your company's letterhead or your full return address. That is the address people are going to return the letter to or to reply to. The second part is the date line, which is the part that is directly written after the heading of your letter. You have to write the full month and include the name of the date and the year. You have to write a full date on your letter. For example, May 7, 2019. A full date, and you have to write the month, because as I told you before, sometimes you get lost between whether it's a day, month, year, or month, day, year, depending on the difference between European American standards of writing the date. So on a letter, it's preferable if you always write the full month. Okay? After the date, you have something called the inside address, which is what? The inside address is the name and address of the person the letter is being written to. That means the receiver of your letter. The next part is the salutation. In a letter, unlike a memo, in a memo we do not use a salutation. In a letter we have to use a salutation. Usually it begins with dear, okay? Dear, a title and the family name, which is Dear Dr. Brown, for example, Dear Mr. X, Dear Ms. X, etc. Now, the fifth part is the body of the letter. Now, the complete message portion of the letter. Now, this body of the letter is the topic of chapter 6. We will talk about that body of the letter in details later on. This body of the letter is the type of the letter you're going to write. So keep in mind, the body of the letter is the type of the letter, not the format. The format is the way your letter looks. The type of the letter is the content of your letter and the reason why you're writing this letter. Okay? Now, the complementary clause is the sixth point. Okay, and it always ends your letter just like the salutation, dear Mr. X or Ms. X. The complimentary letter would be sincerely, yours truly, etc. But make sure your complimentary clause is not flowery. Love, best wishes, hope you see you soon, etc. Doesn't work in a letter. It has to be formal. And after that comes the signature. Allow 4 spaces for your handwritten signature in black ink and then type your name and title below the handwritten signature. Now these are the 7 obligatory parts that should be added to a letter. The 2 extra parts which are optional are the enclosure line. If you remember, when we were talking about the attachment, I said, keep in mind, attachment means enclosure. Okay, so just as you attach a document to your email, you enclose the document with your letter. It indicates any enclosure sent with the letter. Okay? You may simply write enclosures or be more specific and put a colon and mention what that enclosure is. This is optional. If you don't have an enclosure, then you don't add an enclosure line. The same applies to a copy notation, which is the same as a carbon copy or a CC in your email. It tells the reader someone else is receiving a copy of this letter. Now, this is the way a letter looks like. Again, this uses, as you can see, full block format. We have a header, a letterhead, we have the date, we have the inside address, we have the salutation, we have the body of the letter, we have the complimentary line, sincerely yours, we have the signature. Do we have an enclosure here? No, we don't, but we have a copy notation, CC or CN. It's up to you to write it whichever way you want. And this takes us to the end of this slideshow.